Good afternoon, everybody. We're just about to start the Summer 17 release webinar. As I think I introduced myself earlier, but for those who've just turned up, I'm Clive Platt. I'm Head of Service Management here at BrightGen. Next to me is my colleague, Keir Bowden, who's our CTO and Salesforce MVP and all-round Salesforce guru. In a second, I'm going to hand over to Keir, who's going to go through the release highlights. And here's the agenda of some of the things he's going to be talking about. Just for those who have not been on one of our webinars before, just to let you know, if you've got any questions along the way with anything that Keir shares with you, please use the chat option on the webinar, and I will collate all of the questions and then I'll read them out to Keir at the end. Keir will attempt to answer them, hopefully.
often fail.
Yeah.
He'll attempt to answer.
Yeah, he will attempt to answer them. Yeah, and then at the end there, we'll be able to sort of cover off all of the highlights that he's identified. So, without further ado, the man himself, here he is, your very own, Mr. Keir Bowden.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Clive. You're really getting the hang of this after about 15 webinars. Well done.
Thank you.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. So we'll just pile straight in, I think. So the first topic we're talking about is some fond farewells. We've got some features that are shuffling off this mortal coil in this release, so we'll cover off what those are. The cloud scheduler is going to retire in winter 18. I'm not sure how many people have actually been using this. It's been around for a long while, but not particularly well-loved feature. There's no replacement in the platform for this, so if you are using this, if you're one of the lucky few, and you need to find an alternative, then the App Exchange is the place to head to. Chatter Answers is retiring also in this release, and the advice from Salesforce is to switch to Chatter Questions. There's a few minor differences, which you can read a bit more about at the short link that's shown there. And don't worry about capturing these short links. As usual, we'll be sharing the deck and video and everything, and probably sending you multiple copies of everything, so you certainly won't miss out on them. Most important one I would say on the fond farewells is the classic mobile application. So these were the original iOS and Android installed applications that have been around for about 9 or 10 years now, I'd imagine. They are retiring plan to retire on December the 1st, 2017. Safe harbor, that may change. Salesforce reserves the rights, etc. But this is a hard stop. So on December the 1st, 2017, the applications will be removed from the Apple app and the Google Play stores. And existing installations will stop working at this time. So it's not like some of the older iPad applications, which are still going, albeit they're not particularly useful these days. A couple of additional housekeeping notices before we get on to the new features. The rich text editor is back when the locker service is enabled. So if this wasn't something you were aware of that had ever been an issue, then you don't need to worry about it. But basically what it meant was if you enabled the locker service in a sandbox or a developer edition, then the rich text editor basically was broken, not in production, but on those sandboxes or developer editions, because they were moving it over to a new editor. I think the original one was based on the CK editor, and this is based on a new framework called Quill. So this plays nicely with the locker service and is the one they'll be using going forward. The top favorites section has been removed from the favorites list in the Lightning experience because it turns out that it was nobody's favorite rather than being the top favorites, so it had to go. And finally, and this is a really important one, if you're using web to lead or web to case, which I know a few of our customers are, the endpoints are changing. So you'll need to update your web to lead or web to case form to point to the new endpoint. And you can find the full details of that again at the short link shown. So if you're using web to lead, web to case, feel free to get in touch with your friendly service manager, who'll be more than pleased to help you out. So next up, we've got what's new in the Sales Cloud. So when you convert a lead record, now all files and related records are retained and attached through to the contact account or opportunity records as appropriate. The opportunity stage history is now available in the Lightning experience. And there's also a couple of changes around path. So path used to be known as sales path, as originally opportunities, and then it got extended out to opportunities and leads. And it's now been extended further to support contracts and orders. Also, the sales path now displays by default with the key fields and guidance closed, which means that it maximizes the real estate. If a user is looking at the details, they haven't then got a big chunk which is showing them where they currently are on the sales path. All they have to do is click the chevron to open it up again, and there's a setting you can enable so that it remembers the user's preferences. So if they leave it open, then it remains open. If they leave it closed, it remains closed. And you can get to that setting through the path settings setup node. And finally, you can delete charts from list views now. Previously, you could create and edit them, but once you had created them, they were there for good. So now you can get rid of them if they're not what you need to be seeing going forward. You can now view the contact hierarchy in Lightning Experience, which looks a bit like that particular screen grab there. And you can customize the columns that are displayed in that hierarchy page. When you create a new contact in the Lightning Experience, the mailing address, phone number, and fax number fields will be pre-filled with the details from the account record. Obviously, you can overwrite those, but it's an attempt to make the contact creation a little bit more streamlined. You can now use your existing text, HTML, and letterhead email templates in the Lightning Experience. However, still not currently supporting Visualforce templates, and we have no idea when, if ever, those are going to be supported. And finally, you can expand entries in the activity timeline. As we've just shown there, that's a little expanded activity. And you can also take action directly from the activity. So you've got the little drop-down or pop-out button there, which allows me to, on that particular task, to change the priority, edit or delete the task directly from the activity timeline. I haven't got to open the record and then go and do anything with that. So there's a couple of new features available on in Notes. A couple of new buttons on the bottom right of the page. So the share button allows you to share the note easily with users and shows you which users it's already shared with. And the add to records button also allows you to quickly attach the note to one or more records, as well as showing you the records that it's currently attached to. Next up, a few changes around the Kanban side of things. So the Kanban view is now available for knowledge articles and social persona. Probably most people know what knowledge articles are. Not sure how many people are familiar with social persona. So if you haven't come across that before, it's a Salesforce object that represents a contact's profile on a social network, such as Facebook or Twitter. And Kanban views can now summarize by numeric fields. So previously this was limited to currency field only. So anything that can be summed, basically, you can summarize. And you can now group the Kanban records by record owner. And once you've grouped them that way, then you can simply drag records off to other lists in order to change the record owner, rather than having to go and edit the record, etc. So that can speed things up if you do a lot of that sort of thing. Next up, we have some enhancements in the analytics, some quite nice ones, I think. So initially, dashboard filters are now available in the Lightning Experience. So next to the component button, you've got a new filter button. And if you click on that, it opens a dialog allowing you to add in the filter details. When you add a new component to the dashboard in the Lightning Experience via this button, which used to just be plus, I think, now it's plus component to differentiate it from the plus filter, I guess. Before you go and do anything else, the new select report dialog opens so that you can select the source report. So it forces you to go through and choose which report is going to back your Lightning component before you go on and then, back your dashboard component before you go on and actually do anything with that inside the dashboard. This is quite a nice feature. I think you can now subscribe users to reports on their behalf. So regardless of whether they want to receive them or not, you can make the decision and ensure they do receive them. So you simply click on the subscribe button in the report actions drop down, and in the dialog that opens, you have the opportunity to choose the users that you want to inflict the report on. And finally, I really like this one, because I think this is going to save a lot of time for those people who are regularly getting calls from users saying that their dashboards are out of date, etc. So this is a stale dashboard alert. So any dashboard that hasn't been refreshed for at least 24 hours, if you open it, it'll highlight the fact that the data is going to be out of date. In this particular case, 119 days ago, and I'd wager that matches pretty much to the day when we did our last webinar and I created that adoption dashboard to show some new functionality. So obviously that will be slightly out of date now. Next up, the Service Cloud. Minor changes in here. So the key thing is that Lightning Knowledge is now generally available. So this means that the knowledge functionality is now supported in the Lightning experience, whereas previously it was Classic only. So you can now set it up directly in the Lightning experience rather than having to switch back to Classic and change the settings, etc. It's supported in the customer service Napoli template, so it can be used in communities if you want to, in Lightning communities rather, if you want to expose knowledge articles through those, which you probably would. Articles also display in Salesforce 1, and you also get a knowledge record homepage, which just like the other homepage, the record homepage is in the Lightning experience. You can customize it via the Lightning Builder. You can add additional components on standard or custom. You've got pretty much full control over that particular page. There are some caveats around Lightning Knowledge. First off, once it's enabled, you cannot disable it. So make sure you've tested thoroughly in a sandbox before you consider doing that. You also can't enable it if you have more than one article type or if you're a multi-language org. So it's very much aimed at a narrow use case. And it's also recommended you have less than 300 data categories, which I would think most people do, actually, because that's quite a lot of data categories to manage. Really, at the moment, the sweet spot for Lightning Knowledge is either new orgs or orgs that haven't used Lightning very much, if at all. Next up, mobile. So here's the latest list of the hardware devices that Salesforce 1 is supported on. So for the installed application, you need Android 4.4 or greater and iOS 10 or greater. For the installed application and for those that are accessed by the mobile browser. 2 Windows variants are supported, 8.1 and 10, but note that these are for the mobile browser only. There's no installed application for Windows. And for the mobile browser application, you'll need to use a supported browser. So Chrome on Android, Safari on iOS, Edge on Windows 10, and i11 on Windows 8.1. Okay, on Salesforce 1, when you search, you'll now see an additional field under the record name to help differentiate similarly named records. So this is basically the secondary search field to try and give you a little bit more information on the minimal screen real estate. Now you can customize this by setting up the search layout with a second usable field will appear as the secondary field in the search results. So a usable field basically means one that isn't a formula, isn't HTML formatted, it isn't an image, it isn't a pick list, it isn't long text, and it isn't a text area. So it's basically a small field that is free format input. Those are the usable ones in those particular positions. You can now tag posts and comments with topics in Salesforce 1. That's a reasonably useful feature. Legacy charts will retire starting in the Winter 18 release, which may not mean a lot to some people, because if your org was created after Summer 16, which is after sort of mid-June 2016, you'll never have had legacy charts anyway. But otherwise, in Summer 17, so in the coming release, enhanced charts will be enabled by default and legacy charts will be disabled. However, you will be able to go into setup and revert back to the legacy charts for a short period of time. However, as of Winter 18, legacy charts will be disabled and you will not be able to re-enable them. So basically, it's probably a good idea to start getting used to those enhanced charts and figure out what, if anything, you need to work around because the legacy charts are going to leave you. And finally, just to reiterate, I know I mentioned this a few slides ago, but I think it's really important, the Salesforce Mobile Classic version retires on the 1st of December 2017. I know I mentioned it before, but please take note of that if you're using it. Next up, we have Chatter. Right, so Chatter. Key first thing is streams. So streams now have their own homepage, which is accessible from the Chatter homepage by clicking on the streams link on the left-hand side. So this displays all the defined streams in the system and allows you to take action directly from the little drop-down icon to the right-hand side of the stream name. It also displays high-level information about the number of records that are being followed, and if you click into that, then it will display you a dialog with the full list of records that are associated with the stream. You can now create up to 100 streams. I can't remember what the number was before. From memory, it was something like 25. It wasn't a particularly big number. The Chatter homepage will display you the 5 most recent streams that you've accessed. You can also choose which notifications to access through the notifications button on the feed. It is somewhat binary though, because basically you get a choice of every post or nothing. So basically choose whether you want feast or famine. The follow button now includes any existing streams. So if you have streams defined, then clicking that plus follow button shown there actually becomes a drop down. So you've got the concept of the in feed what I follow, which is what the follow button would normally do. Then you've also got a list of streams that you can choose to add this particular item to. And again, you can choose the level of notifications that you want. So you can choose whether to include, in this case, because it's records, do you want the feed track changes in the updates sent to the stream? If you do, click on the filter button and then choose whether you want all updates, which is everything, or you want to remove feed tracked updates through the exceptionally well-named fewer updates. So fewer updates means no feed track changes. Why that couldn't be there in plain English, I do not know. A few other bits and pieces around Chatter. The company highlights feed is now the default for all new users and for existing users that follow less than 10 items. And there's also a new group filter to show unread posts only so that you don't waste time searching for changes. So if you click the filter icon to the right of the search box, you can then choose unread posts, as I have there, as the view that you want to see. Chatter files. So access to libraries in files is now generally available in both the Lightning Experience and Classic. The keyword here is access. So you still need CRM content permissions to create libraries, and currently you can only create libraries in the Classic user interface. But this is kind of the start of a move to decouple libraries from content, as far as we know. Also, folders within libraries are now generally available. So when you click into a library, I know a lot of people have been asking this for quite a while. So once you click into a library, as well as the button that you normally get to upload files, you'll also see there's a new folder. So you can create a folder, put the files in there, and then if you click into that folder, you'll still have the new folder button, and you can create yourself another new folder and have a kind of bunch of subfolders building up a complex hierarchy if you so desire. And you can also easily move subfolders around within that particular library structure. You can now create validation rules on files, so you can ensure that all users fill in all the information that you require when they're uploading a file. There's a new Lightning delivery player to preview content in the Lightning Experience. So this is pure HTML5. The previous version was a Flash player, so as well as being somewhat dated technology and somewhat unpopular technology in some areas, it also meant that it wouldn't work necessarily on things like iPads, because Steve Jobs was always very keen that Flash should not pollute any of his devices. So it's pure HTML5 player, but as I say, only available in the Lightning Experience. You can right-click to open a new file. Open a file in a new tab in the Lightning Experience. So there's a lot of that. There's a few more of those coming in setup as well. And finally, Lightning Experience specific again. You can drag files onto the attachment or files related list for records to make it easier to upload files into your Salesforce instance. Next up, communities. So there's a new template in town for partner communities, which is named Partner Central. So this is a Lightning Bolt community. Lightning Bolts are a mechanism for effectively being able to package template and move communities around, make them available on the App Exchange, etc. So this is one that's come from Salesforce. It's built on native Lightning, and it's intended to be a one-stop shop for partner management. There is an awful lot to that, which I'm not even going to try and cover today, but I've given you the short link there to the release notes. And I'm sure, again, if you get in touch with your friendly service or account manager, they'll be more than pleased to talk to you about it in a bit more detail. Communities are now supported in change sets, so you haven't got to do so much in the way of manual changes as we've had to do in the past. This is for updates only, so you'll still have to create communities manually prior to doing any change set deployment. So note that unlike a lot of the Salesforce metadata in change sets, this isn't an additive type of thing. This completely overwrites the target community. So if you remove something from the source community, that'll also be removed from the target community, which is a slight change to how you might be used to working with change sets. So navigation menu items are supported in change sets, but any that link to list views are reset to the default list view, and custom list views aren't included as dependencies in the change set. So you basically have to go and manually add those. And also page variations and audience targeted are not currently supported, and nor are navigational and featured topics. A few other bits and pieces again on communities. So more retirements. The Koa and Kokua templates are no longer available for use when creating new communities. So these were very much targeted at purely, I think one of them was very much around being able to raise cases, a kind of very narrow self-service. Another one had a bit of a mobile aspect to it as well. So those are no longer available to create new communities. If you've got communities which use those templates, they will continue to be supported. But the advice from Salesforce is to, if you're creating a new one, use the customer service Napoli template if you can, and also consider whether you want to move across to the customer service Napoli, because that's got a lot more functionality than the Koa and Cocoa. They haven't received a lot of love for a little while now. There's also a new community management app exchange package coming. So this includes a community scorecard, which shows you information, for example, around which users are contributing top articles, and also includes participation reports so that you can see which users are logging in and their activity level. As usual with this App Exchange package, it's not actually made available on the App Exchange until after Summer 17 goes live. So it's normally available within a couple of days, but you just have to kind of wait and check back to find out exactly when that is going to be made available. Next up, and our final topic, so we're going to have a slightly shorter webinar probably than the last few we've had, so I'm sure everyone is relieved about, is some changes around the platform. So you can now add flows to Lightning pages, should you wish to do that. Many items in setup now you can right-click into, and which will open a new tab. Salesforce have finally come around to the idea that we might want to have more than one tab open if we're doing a lot of repetitive tasks in setup, maybe across a number of I don't know, record types or profiles or something like that. We might want to actually have them all open together and tick our way through them. There is a new Einstein recommendations component that you can add to your Lightning record or home pages, so pages you built with the Lightning App Builder. And this basically looks for users who share similar interests to you and recommends that you should probably follow them because they appear to be working in the same area. And then also on the setup side of things, the object home area, which used to appear just straightforward down the left-hand menu and you had to navigate to that node, and that now appears as a tab as soon as you open setup. So it's always there. You can jump into that, and then as soon as you click on an object, you'll get a menu down the left-hand side rather than having to scroll down potentially a long list of areas. So that should be much more usable, much quicker to get to, which is certainly I spend a lot of time in that area. A few changes to approvals, mainly around Salesforce 1. You can now reassign and recall approval requests in Salesforce 1 and in the Lightning experience. And you can also view approval comments directly in Salesforce 1. So if someone has approved it but has made a comment, then you'll be able to see what that is rather than having to log into the main UI as we've had to do in the past. Formula-based pick list. Now this is pretty cool. This has kind of come out of the global pick list value sets as well, because one of the things about having a global pick list value set across a number of fields is that if you set up a default, the way things currently work, then each of those fields gets that as the default, which may not make sense. Those fields may have different purposes and they may need different defaults. So what you can now do is create a formula-based default value which overrides the default value. It doesn't replace it necessarily completely, So if we just look at this little screenshot shown here, at the top I've got the list of values, and I've got the default box checked for the value of medium. So that means that any case record that's created will have a severity of medium. However, I've then created a default formula field that sets the value to high for anyone raising a case with the system administrator profile. So I've taken the view that sysadmin requests are obviously important and should be dealt with as a priority. So when a new record is created, first the formula is evaluated. If the user is a system administrator, then the value gets set to high. However, if the user isn't a system administrator, so no value is returned from the formula editor, the default entry from the values shown above will take precedence and set the value to medium. So again, this can look at other facets of the type of record that it is, sort of the type of field, to determine what sort of default value to be set. So yeah, really quite useful, I think. We'll probably drive a few more pick lists into global value sets, which obviously makes maintenance quite a lot easier. A few things to note on Lightning components. So firstly, the way the locker service is going to be enforced has changed. So previously, the idea was when the locker service came on, that applied to every Lightning component in the system. Even if somebody else wrote it a year ago for you, you'd have to then get hold of them and ask them to come and do some maintenance on it, because the locker service could well interfere with it. So they've now come round to the idea that that's not the best way of doing things. So the way it will work is the locker service will be enforced for all Lightning components created with API version 40 and above. API version 40 being summer 17. So all of your existing Lightning components won't be impacted by the locker service unless you take the decision to increase the API version in the metadata. For those that are interested in more detail, I realise not everyone on this call is a developer. For those interested in a bit more detail about it, I wrote a blog post about this a while ago that you can access via the short link there and find out a little bit more about that. You can now override standard actions, such as create, edit, view, with Lightning components like you can in Classic with Visualforce pages. And finally, much like the release or two ago, the error panel for server-side exceptions was improved to try and give a bit more information. The error panel for client-side exceptions now has less of a bath view about it and actually gives you some hopefully useful information to help with tracking down the problem. And the last couple of bits and pieces around the platform. So first off, when a session is about to expire, what currently happens is you receive an alert. However, if you don't happen to have that tab open, it's also not a tab open, but if you don't happen to be on that tab, it's very easy to miss that. So what happens now is you get a browser notification. So regardless of what you're doing in the browser, you'll just get a little notification in Chrome. It's just a little pop-up type of thing, little dialogue that sort of appears on the top right to let you know that the session is about to expire. So you should always know, basically. Healthcare custom baselines are now generally available. Again, this is something, I think we've talked about this in the past. I think these were introduced in beta in the last release. So I've blogged about what they are and why I think they're a good thing and what custom baselines give you. And you can, again, find that post via the short link shown. And finally, it's quite a neat little feature here. You can access Visualforce page metrics via the SOAP API. Sadly, not directly via Apex. You have to come in through the SOAP API. But this will basically track the number of views that a specific Visualforce page received on a specific date, with up to 90 days of history. So basically, if you create a new Visualforce page that you think is going to be useful to everyone, this will give you a way of finding out if it's actually being used or not. Now note that this doesn't track anything about the users accessing the page. There's no kind of identifying information or anything like that retained. It's purely the number of times that page was opened in a browser. So as always, I say this every time because I'm sure everyone's heard this before who's been to any one of our webinars. This is a light touch across the features in Summer 17 that we believe will be of most interest to our customers. There's 536 pages of release notes that I enjoyed, some of which doesn't really apply to any of our customers, like the Health Cloud, for example. I don't believe we've got anybody working with that at the moment, so there's a lot of stuff that you can skip, but there's a hell of a lot of information in there. If you visit the short link that's shown there, you'll see the release notes, training information, demo videos, and much more. And in true Columbo style, just one more thing. So basically, this is something I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to, those that are maybe thinking that they're not far off switching to the Lightning experience. So this is a tweet from Andres Glucksmann, who's quite active in the Salesforce community, and he's looked at the release notes and figured out the mentions of features that are for Salesforce Classic only versus Lightning experience only. And you can see in Winter 16, it was very much skewed. They were still building out Salesforce Classic quite a bit, and Lightning was sort of just about getting there. But really, since summer 16, most of the focus has been going more and more onto Lightning, the Lightning experience rather than Classic. And in summer 17, there's 25 features which are specific to Lightning, so it's Classic, and 244 which are Lightning experience only. So this is something that we've mentioned in the past on these webinars, that it feels like the way that Salesforce are going to get everybody moved over to the Lightning experience is basically just by all the kind of new, cool, funky development will all take place in the Lightning experience, and eventually there'll be enough there that will drive you over to it. Obviously, there's still a requirement for feature parity, particularly on the Service Cloud side of things, but it's certainly heading in that direction. So that's it from me. Do we have any questions?
Loads of questions.
Awesome.
Okay, so brace yourself. Incoming. So the first one is regarding Chatter.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something about that you could subscribe people on their behalf.
No, that's not Chatter. That was reports. So you got the concept of subscribing to scheduled reports.
Right.
But what used to happen was people used to have to go in and subscribe themselves.
Yeah.
So this will actually be, in all seriousness, this is the kind of thing that will be really useful with kind of senior executives who don't really want to learn how to use Salesforce, but just want some reporting information mailed to them, so you can go and set that up on their behalf without having to know their passwords or anything like that.
Sure. And I guess the question is, has that got any implications regarding GDPR next May? People, it's all around the subscribing and whether they've given you permission to.
I wouldn't have thought so, because this is internal. You can only subscribe internal users of the system, so this will be your colleagues. You won't be subscribing external people. What a merry time and misrule that would be if we could do that. Sadly, we can't.
Okay, sure. Okay, another question. What about metadata API for communities? Also supported? Also overwrites?
Don't know to both of those. We'll take that one, and we'll come back when we email out the links to the slides, etc. We'll include an answer to that.
Sure. Okay, so another question here around the default pick list value. If it's free text, can you enter anything?
Well, it's a formula, so you should be able to return anything that the formula can return. I guess in theory, and again, this is one that I'll check, but my gut feel is that if you haven't said that it's restricted to the defined values, you will be able to specify a default that isn't part of that defined value. But there is a checkbox on a pick list where you can say restricted to the defined value set, so that the only values that can be stored in there are those that are defined on the pick list.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. So another question here around the difference in the number of features that have been developed for Lightning as opposed to those that have been declining in Classic. The question is this simply Salesforce plugging the gap between those that were currently available for Lightning but were available for Classic?
No, I think it's a mixture of both. So you got where they say if they say it's for Lightning only, that will typically be something which isn't a feature parity with Classic, but it's actually a new feature that's been introduced. So a lot of those will be around things that just aren't possible in the Classic page, such as Kanban, Path that was Sales Path, the activity feed. So it'll be all new bits and pieces around those. But I think the message on it is that really the focus for Salesforce is they're clearly still working to achieve feature parity, but the Classic pages look like they're very much in a maintenance mode now, and any problems with them will be fixed. But any new features, any new functionality is purely going to be in the Lightning experience. Salesforce, I guess, ideally would like to only maintain one UI. Because of the way they're set up, they'll probably be maintaining Classic longer than Microsoft are maintaining Windows XP. But I guess I think this is the way they'll move people over. They've tried kind of trying to persuade people, and the way to do it, and I think it's the right way, in my opinion, is to just add so many new features into Lightning experience that you end up having no choice, and you accept the fact that you might bounce back to Classic occasionally, but you switch over in the main because it's got all the cool new stuff that you want to use.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Keir. That's it for now. Okay, so now it's my turn for a little bit of gratuitous. Thank you for a bit of gratuitous marketing. So, for any of those who are not already service management customers of ours, if you're interested, we're hosting a service management event on the 14th of June on the 17th floor at Salesforce Tower in the boardroom there. Now, we've done these before, and basically what they are there's some drinks and nibbles, so there's a little inducement there to for you to want to come along. And then while we've got you as a captive audience, my colleague James Burgess, who's one of my service managers, and myself will give a little whistle-stop tour of our service management offering, telling you how it can sort of benefit your business, and it might be a good vehicle for you to drive through some of your change and continuous improvement and innovation, and how service management can help you. We also invite a customer guest speaker who is one of our service management customers to give a sort of customer's eye view of what we offer. And this year that's going to be a lady by the name of Dominique Standring. Dominique is the CRM manager for the Challenge charity, which is part of the National Citizen Service. Dominique's coming along and to tell you what she thinks of what we do. And if you're interested in signing up, there's a link there which we'll be sending out with the slide deck. You'll be able to click on that or put that into your browser address bar and sign up for the event. It's free, obviously, and we'd love to see as many of you as possible. So please feel free to sign up. Oh, and there's some drinks and nibbles afterwards as well, as if you haven't had enough. And there's plenty of networking with some of our prospective customers as well. Talk to any of our service management team there or the sales team. So it's just a way of just finding out what we do and then see if that could be a benefit to you. And we would love to see as many of you along as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All from me. So if there's no further ado,
I think I'd just like to say one thing, which is apologies to those who tune in to hear the sirens that we normally have as part of our webinars. I realised that we missed out in the Spring 17 release webinar. We've missed out again today. I don't know what's going on, whether people are learning to drive better on the A12 around Whittam. There was one in the distance, but nothing at the ambulance station or the fire engines down the road. So apologies for that. We'll do our best to get those back in time for the next one.
Thank you, Keir. Thanks. I didn't realise they were so popular. But anyway, thank you all for your attention. I hope you found that useful. We'll be sending out the sort of collateral and links to the recording if you want to run it again. If there's anything specific that you want to discuss with us offline, please feel free to here's some contact details for you. By all means, email me. There's my email address and number. Please just give us a call, and if we go through anything that you want to talk about in detail. Thanks again for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the session, and we'll speak again soon, no doubt. Well, I certainly hope so anyway. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.